We're in a 2008 Nissan Rogue that's equipped with the Intellikey starting system. We're going to do a semi plug-and-play remote starter in this vehicle. We're going to use a Crime Stopper remote starter. We have ignition plugs and we have immobilizer plugs for this vehicle. We're going to have to make 3 connections. We're going to make a ground connection, a parking light input connection, a parking light connection, and then off of the Evo All, we're going to have to make approximately 5 connections. We're going to make a can high, can low at the diagnostic plug. We're going to make a couple connections at the ignition tumbler. And that's going to allow us to turn the ignition on when we enter the vehicle without having the key in it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started. Okay, one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to unplug the main ignition plug. Main ignition plug is located at the back of the ignition switch. I'm not going to give you the disassembly of this vehicle. Just going to give you the installation here. We're going to go ahead, we're going to unplug the main ignition plug. We're going to plug our T-harness plug into the ignition switch. And again, we're going to make sure it locks in. I want a half plugged in plug. We're going to plug the vehicle plug into the other half of our T-harness. We're going to locate the vehicle's immobilizer at this point. We're going to unplug the immobilizer and we're going to do our T-harness interruption here as well. So we're looking at the vehicle ignition switch and we're going to find the immobilizer connection here and we're going to interrupt that. Okay, our ignition immobilizer connection is located at the back of the ignition switch right here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to unplug the immobilizer plug. Okay, with the immobilizer unplugged, we're going to go ahead and we're going to plug in our supplied immobilizer plug. And then we're going to plug the vehicle's immobilizer plug that we've removed into our T-harness. Okay, at this point we're ready to go ahead and make our traditional connections to this vehicle. We're going to have a couple connections to this harness at the ignition tumbler. We're looking at the ignition switch right now. This plug is the tumbler plug. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do a test and then we're going to make a couple connections here. We're going to unplug the ignition tumbler plug that I've previously showed you. And we're going to remove some of the protective covering here so that we can do a test. Now we're being careful not to score the wires, and we're going to plug it back in. Okay, before we make our connections to the tumbler, we're looking for 3 wires. We're looking for a constant 12-volt wire that's red and blue, and then we're looking for the tumbler sense, which is red and white, and then we have the key sense, which is red and blue. The instructions detail the test procedure. We're just going to use a light for our testing. So we're going to, without touching the ignition tumbler, we're going to test the red and blue wire, and we have one that's constantly hot. That's our 12-volt power. The red and white, that's the tumbler sense. We're going to put our light on that. When we push in the tumbler, it's going to turn on. Okay, so there we have it. When we push in the tumbler, it goes hot. So that is our tumbler sense wire. So we have one red and blue left. We're going to test that to make sure it's the key sense wire. To test for the key sense, we're going to remove the key from our fob by releasing it and pulling it out. And we're going to attach our test light to our wire that we think is the the key sense, which is the last red with blue, and we're going to put the key in the ignition, and it'll light when the key goes in. That is our key sense wire. So I'm going to leave my light hanging here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to make our connections. Okay, we've completed our immobilizer connections. If you look at the plug, we have our first one is our tumbler sense, second one in, constant power, third one, key sense. Now keep in mind, with the items you purchase from me will be configured and will have the outputs for this tumbler connection. Okay, we're also going to need to connect to the can high, can low, the diagnostic plug. We're going to go ahead and we're going to remove the loom here so that we can make connections. Okay, we're going to slice into this loom. So I'm feeling around to feel where the gap is in the loom, where the seam is, and I'm just going to cut through the tape. I'm going to make about a 6-inch slice in the tape. We're going to get down into the wires here, and we're going to pull them out so that we can work on them up here. Now with the Nissan, the can high and can low are twisted together as in, all vehicles pretty much. We're looking for the dark blue as our can high and our pink as our can low. So we found these two wires, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to make connections. Now, these are big enough to use T-taps. Since I'm in my shop, I am going to do strip and wrap connections on these wires. We've made our can high and can low connections. Now we're going to reinsert these wires back into the loom and apply a piece of tape. Our can high and can low connections are complete. We need to ground our system, so we're going to apply our ground to the structure of the vehicle. I'm going to go up into the cross member for the dash, and we're going to apply a ground. Okay, and if you look, there's the location of my ground. Structure of the vehicle, no plastic involved. Okay, we're going to activate the parking lights with a positive signal. We're looking up in the upper driver's kick panel. We're going to be going for a red wire at this plug right here. It's a white plug up in the driver's kick panel behind the fuse box. So I'm going to clear off some of that tape and make our connection. Okay, so we've cleared the tape away, and we're going for that red wire next to the yellow wire. FYI, I believe the yellow wire is a brake, but we do not need it in this configuration. We're going to receive a brake signal through data. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to test the red wire and make my parking light connection. Okay, I've got my test light on the red wire. I'm going to activate the parking lights, and my light is illuminating, so we have the correct wire. Okay, I am going to use a T-tap for this connection. And we've applied our tap. We're going to connect our white wire to the parking light activation. And since it's a positive parking light trigger, we're going to connect the red with black stripe to a constant positive. We're going to use one of our wires, our positive wire at our T-harness for parking light power. Okay, we've sourced our parking light polarity select at our T-harness on one of our red wires. And we've simply applied a T-tap and connected that wire there. We're going to begin programming. Before we begin the programming procedure, make sure you remove the key from the fob and have the fob at least 10 feet away from the vehicle. To begin programming, we're going to unplug the Evo wall completely. It's a program button located on the top. We're going to press and hold the programming button while we insert the 4-pin data plug into the device. When we do this, the lights on the front are going to cycle. We want to release when we see a yellow light come on. So we're going to go ahead and plug in the data plug. Blue, red, yellow, release. If we miss it, we can pull the plug and repeat the procedure, or we can keep the button down and it'll cycle back around to solid yellow. At this point, we're going to plug in the remaining connectors. We're going to plug in the 20-pin plug. We're going to plug in the red plug on the back side, and we're going to plug in our can high, can low plug, which is white also. And we're ready to to begin the programming procedure. I'm going to press and release the program button 2 times. The yellow light will flash. We're waiting for it to go solid. Now we're going to place the key in the ignition and turn the ignition to the run position. Now we're going to wait for the blue light to flash rapidly. We're going to shut the key off, and then we're going to turn the key back on. The lights will alternate through all 3 colors while the Evo All is programming the key codes for the vehicle. We're going to leave the ignition in the run position, and we're going to wait for the lights to stop alternating and the yellow light to flash. This process can take up to 3 minutes. The Evo is now programmed. We'll shut the key off and remove it from the ignition. Okay, we're outside of our 2008 Intellikey Rogue. We're going to activate the remote starter with the OEM remote. Press the lock button 3 times, and we've activated the remote starter. We've also programmed 2 long-range fobs. So we've shut it off with the long-range fob. We're going to activate it with our long-range fob. We're going to enter the vehicle by pressing the button on the door handle. And we're going to open the door. We're going to be able to enter the vehicle, and we should be able to turn the tumbler to the run position. At this point, we'll step on the brake to release the remote starter, and we'll drive off like we normally would.